Mr. Teal then represents the journey that we've been on at Teal Unicorn to understand how to cope in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complicated and ambiguous life. And as we've gone on our own personal journey, we've been collecting these ideas as something that we can share. And we call that surviving and thriving in a VUCA world. S&T Happens. See what we did there. So, notice that we said VUCA as volatile, uncertain, complicated and ambiguous. So the world usually says complex and ambiguous. But if you go back to the origins of the term VUCA, you'll see that what they meant by C was that the battlefield, because it's originally a military term, has many, many things going on, and it's impossible to understand how they all interact and what's going to happen. So complicated is actually a better word now that we use the word complex in the context of complex adaptive systems to mean something slightly more and deeper and more profound. So we like to say that VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complicated and ambiguous, together define a complex world, define complexity. So we live in a VUCA world, and right at the moment it's more VUCA than we're used to for a long time, since perhaps the Second World War. So we're learning to come to terms with that, and it's a challenge to all of us. So at Teal Unicorn we've been through the same challenges. As I explained, we've had my cancer, but we've also had, of course, COVID, just when we were starting to build a really nice business model of travelling back and forward between New Zealand and Vietnam and working in both countries, and having a lot of fun doing that, going to Vietnam 4 or 5 times a year. Suddenly that was impossible, and Cherry was in fact one of the last people back into New Zealand before lockdown, the first lockdown. So we had that, and if you go back further, my personal journey has had some twists and turns in the last few years with meeting Cherry and rediscovering my long-lost daughter and having 2 new stepchildren come into my life with Cherry. So I went from 1 child to 4 in the space of 1 year. And before that, I survived depression, which got very severe, and turned my life around there with the help of citalopram. And before that, my marriage failed, and I was a solo parent with a teenager coming to grips with all of that. And before that, 15 years ago, I quit my corporate job and went consulting. So it's been a life that you would say it was difficult to have made any long-term plans. Well, it's easy to make long-term plans, but they were all pretty pointless because the unexpected happened over and over and over again, and is happening with greater and greater frequency. So planning itself starts to feel a little pointless, and we need to rethink how we survive and thrive. This isn't a new reality so much as that reality is slapping us harder. So life has always been VUCA, but in more stable times we could approximate life with simple models, with models that said that what we plan to do now will still be approximately correct in a year's time or 3 years' time. And the errors that introduced were small enough to be negligible a lot of the time. Although IT, as a rapidly changing field, has always wondered why it sucks so badly at delivering projects. Depending who you believe, only a quarter or a third of our IT projects come in on time, on budget, successfully. And we've always been wondering, why is that? And the answer is because IT was a lot more VUCA than many other aspects of society, like, for example, civil engineering or commerce. So the planning models, the simple approximation planning models worked okay in a lot of contexts in society, but they never worked very well in IT. And now, all across life, things are accelerating and destabilizing to the point where everybody's got the same issue, that these simplified models just don't work. That the world changes far too quickly for us to plan something and then execute, because by the time we're executing, the plan is already obsolete. And so this leads us to new ways of working. And Agile was a reaction to this issue. The whole Agile philosophy has been transformative to IT as a way of getting away from these approximations, these big step changes, and moving to many small steps so that we have frequent opportunities to recalibrate and replan as the world changes underneath us. That's the heart of Agile. That's the fundamental of Agile. And at the same time, we've had a productivity paradox that even though the technologies of the information technologies in the last half a century have advanced at this astonishing pace, the productivity of the workplace hasn't. And people have struggled to understand why that is. And part of the new ways of working is trying to unlock the productivity potential of the workplace. One of the reasons is that as we move into a service economy and an information economy, a greater and greater percentage of people are knowledge workers. And the people that the new technologies empower are particularly the knowledge workers. And yet they haven't seen this enormous acceleration of their productivity that one would expect. And the primary reason for this is because our systems are constipated by bureaucracy. And again, the bureaucratic scientific method of management is a model that was a successful model as an approximation of how to deal with reality when we had lots of transactional work and fairly stable environments where the work was repeatable and defined, and we could incrementally optimize it with statistics and measurement. But now, when the transactions are different today to what they were a month ago or a year ago, even those methods are falling apart with transactional workers, and they certainly don't work with knowledge workers. So to unlock the potential of our workers, we need much more adaptable ways of working, whether they're transactional workers or knowledge workers. And adaptability has two foundations. It has agility, the ability to iterate in many small steps and regularly reflect and change and improve in response to changing circumstances, and resilience. Because the other fundamental that we have come to understand is that another one of the foundational principles that's patently false is the idea of execute perfectly. That we must have zero risk, that failure is unacceptable. And we've come to realize that not only is failure acceptable, but it's inevitable. In fact, in a VUCA world, you cannot possibly know what's going to happen until you do something. Nobody can predict what's going to happen, no matter how much you pay them. They cannot possibly tell you whether this is going to work or not. The only way to find out is to do it. Therefore, all work is experiment. And by definition, if all work is experiment, it's going to fail sometimes. So failure is not only inevitable, but it's a normal part of work. Success is found under a pile of failure. Failure is the road to success. Failure is normal. And if failure is normal, we damn well better build our systems on the assumption of failure and be resilient to failure. So the two foundations of adaptability are agility and resilience. And these two principles drive new ways of working. I guess there's a third stream in there, which is humanistics, is the restoration of humanity to work. That's not necessarily a foundation of adaptability, but it's a foundation of new ways of working. That as well as agility and resilience, we embrace humanistics. And so the word agile is used to try and describe all of this stuff, all of these new ways of working. But that's asking an awful lot of such a little word. It's unreasonable. So at Teal Unicorn, we looked around trying to find a better term that was generally accepted, and we didn't succeed. We couldn't find something that encompassed all of these principles, all of these concepts. So we use the term human systems agility to embrace all of it. There's the human aspects of people, to empower people, to liberate people, to respect people, and the systems aspects of it around flow and removing constraints and understanding complex systems and how they behave. And then there's the agility side of it around the ways of working so that we iterate and increment and experiment and explore. Human systems agility is our term to try and encompass all the new ways of working. But as we adopt new ways of working, that implies that we also need to have new ways of managing. Because you cannot get new ways of working until you allow people to work in new ways. And to allow them to do that, you have to change how you manage them. So our passion, our focus, our shtick at Teal Unicorn is to try and understand the different new ways of managing that in turn empower new ways of working. And so new ways of management leads us to servant leader and flipping the hierarchy and embracing failure and creating safe work environments and embracing diversity and a whole lot of concepts around new ways of managing. So if we have new ways of working and new ways of managing, is that enough for us to survive in a VUCA world? Well, not yet, because the other big piece of the puzzle we think to embrace is that planning goes out the window. We've already touched on this. And so if we're not going to plan in conventional, traditional ways, don't you love my son's HQ Kingswood? If we don't plan in traditional ways, how do we think about the future? And that opens up a whole domain of embracing VUCA, uncertainty, embracing failure, and acknowledging the fact that we absolutely don't know. And so if we absolutely don't know about the future, should we plan at all? And there's a school of thought that says you should just optimize for the present, because any optimizing for the future is just waste. We're not sure we go quite that far, but we certainly like to think that there are much lighter, simpler ways to think about the future. And we've written a lot about that as well. Perhaps that'll be a separate video. So if we have new ways of working and new ways of managing and new ways of planning, are we there? Well, yes, except it's not going to work if we try and do it in the same old Big Bang ways. If we try and move to new ways of working in a Big Bang, then we kind of didn't get the point. And yet we see this all the time with Big Bang agile transformations, where in 3 months' time we'll be working in a new way as of May the 1st. And yeah, somebody didn't go to class when they designed that organizational change. So the fourth element of it is that we need to advance. We don't like the word transform. We need to advance to new ways of working in an agile way. We need to advance towards these new ways of working, starting where we are and moving forward experimentally. Because nobody knows what's going to work for this organization right here, right now, no matter how much you pay them or how fancy their suits are. They have no idea what's going to work in your organization. And the only way to find out is to experiment and find out what works for your people. Who should do the experimenting? Well, going back to our second point about new ways of managing, it's not the management who come up with the new ways of working, it's the people doing the work. Let the people doing the work design the work. Liberate the people doing the work to be able to act as adults and think intelligently about what they do, instead of forcing them into a mold where they're an unthinking drone. So with these four elements, we have our S&T Happens, surviving and thriving in a VUCA world. We need new ways of working, we need new ways of managing, we need to change how we think about planning, and we need to advance towards these new ways of working in new ways. That, my friends, is surviving and thriving.